for John Telford Show on Saturday, February the 18th at 9:30 on this sunny morning in the year of our Lord, 2023. State legislators can finally make billionaires pay what they owe. No longer should a handful of billionaires be able to rig the rules to redirect resources from our communities to their country clubs, from our classrooms to their ballrooms, and from our public parks to their private jets. For decades, billionaires have rigged the rules in their favor at the state level and at the federal level to avoid paying what they owe in taxes, while we working people have paid the price. And with the active support of politicians who depend on them to fund their campaigns, the rich just keep getting richer. During the COVID-19 pandemic alone, the world's 10 richest men vastly expanded their fortunes to $1.5 trillion by, don't call into the show, by gouging prices, by taking advantage of a global crisis, and by denying fair wages to workers. Last month, state legislators and grassroots organizations from 8 states banded together to say enough, and they launched the first ever multi-state effort to pass wealth tax bills across the country and foster a fair shake economy where all families from all backgrounds have the freedom to thrive. And Michigan is not one of those 8 yet, but I'm hoping Governor Whitmer that very soon they will be. In California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Minnesota, New York, Maryland, and Washington, but not yet Michigan, they introduced legislation to finally make billionaires pay what they owe toward making health care, education, and many other essential needs accessible to everyone, to all of us. I'm now calling on lawmakers on this little show on WCHB AM 1340, 9:30 in the morning. I'm calling on lawmakers, including in Michigan, in the remaining 42 states, to join this nationwide effort and do the same in their own state legislatures. Because no longer should a handful of billionaires be able to rig the rules to redirect resources from our communities to their country clubs, and from our classrooms to their ballrooms, and from our public parks to their private jets. We're seeing the results of rising, don't call into the show, we're seeing the results of rising income inequality every single day in overcrowded classrooms, potholes, the size of buses, on our streets, a healthcare system that puts people in debt at the most difficult time of their lives, and communities that are becoming unlivable due to rising costs and generations of underinvestment. The solution to this is so damn obvious. Unrig the rules and tax the ultra-rich, okay? But with Congress in gridlock, states have got to assume the responsibility of putting a check on these billionaires and these wealthy corporations. We got to do this. This community-led wealth tax effort of these 8 states that are starting it, and I hope Michigan's going to be the 9th pretty quick. This community-led wealth tax effort will help alleviate these deep inequalities. It'll help alleviate it. Hi-yo, Silver. This is Dr. John Telford coming to you live on Saturday morning, April the 29th at 9:30 in the morning, welcoming you back to the half-hour John Telford Show on WCHV AM 1340, Detroit's Gospel and Community Station, in the year of our Lord, 2023. The question isn't, are Biden and Trump too old to be president? That's not the question. They aren't too old. I'm way older than both of them, and I've still got all my faculties. No, the more crucial question is Trump too evil and far too fascistic to be president? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes. Before the 2020 presidential election, I was with my lovely, late, lamented wife, Adrian, and one of the many black athletes I've coached. And Adrian pointed to him and said to him, if Trump wins, you'll be back picking cotton. And then she said that she'd die in an oven because she was Jewish. And then she pointed to me and said that I would disappear in the middle of the night because of my years of well-publicized attacks on the treasonous traitor Trump. And she was telling the plain truth. Oh, and incidentally, I mistakenly announced on this show last week that a certain very important affair was last week, which it wasn't. It's going to be this week. It's going to be today, Saturday, April the 29th, between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock p.m. at the Sacred Heart Church Activities Building at 3451 Rivard. At it, community activists of my acquaintance, Helen Moore, Malik Yakini, Elena Harada, Monica Lewis-Patrick, Yusuf Shakur, and other local activists are going to discuss the state of our city. That's Saturday, April 29th. That's today. Between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock at the Sacred Heart Church Activities Building at 3451 Rivard. So please attend it if you can. And up front, before I forget, I want to encourage you to go to the Detroit House of Pancakes on East Jefferson for breakfast or lunch, and go over to V's Boutique on East Warren, near the corner of Outer Drive. Check out the fine apparel for ladies she's got over there, and then head back to East Jefferson to dine at the fabulous and historic Sinbad's Restaurant on the river. We've been losing a lot of good folks lately. Lynn Telford, the mother of my daughter, Catherine Telford Garrett, and Corinna Ditta, the mother of my son, Steve Telford. And now the world's progressives have lost the great Harry Belafonte, the actor, calypso singer with West Indian roots, that truly radical compadre of Dr. Martin Luther King in their dedicated civil rights crusade, and a man who also happened to be a big fan of the Detroit-bred world welterweight and middleweight champion, Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson. He was a fan of Sugar Ray's, Harry Belafonte was. Excuse me. And speaking of our hometown, Detroit, today I want to talk about Detroit and about blue salts and about some great Detroit athletes, particularly about some great boxers like Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis. And I've written poems about them too in my newest poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. That's the book's title, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. And when this show goes on my Facebook page today, the feature picture with it will be a picture of Sugar Ray Robinson. Okay, let me recite my poem, Blue Salt. My name is Detroit. I'm a blue-collar town. Blue salt melts my mid-March snow. Speedy cars and sprinters spring from me. I father fierce fighters and funky music. In a Motown moment, I can spit the blues right back in a bureaucrat's eye. Have you never seen blue salt? No complex chemistry here. Only the old color of a new sky. You know, we rightfully proud citizens of Motown have our Chevrolets and our classy Cadillacs and Lincolns and Corvettes and Mustangs. We have our old Olympic sprint champions, Eddie Tolan of Cass Technical High School, and the great gray ghost, Henry Carr of Northwestern High School, and several other old world-ranked sprinters. We have our boxing immortals, Joe Louis and the great Sugar Ray, plus Diana Ross and the amazing Aretha. However, unlike the last line in my poem, Blue Salt, Detroit's excellence in those four endeavors is less new than it is historic. I celebrate that luminous history in my books and in my poetry readings in our high schools as the Detroit Public Schools contracted poet in residence. So young Detroiters will know about our city and particularly about our glittering and globally dominant track background and boxing background. When Eddie Tolan won the 1932 Olympic 100 and 200 meter dashes, he was proclaimed the world's fastest human. 4 years before Jesse Owens was proclaimed the world's fastest human in 1936. And Jesse tied Detroiter Tolan's Olympic 100-meter mark in Berlin. He didn't break it. Jesse Owens had also tied the world 100-yard record while he was still in high school at Cleveland East Tech. And Henry Carr was history's only other prep sprinter to accomplish that same feat when he tied the world 220-yard dash record of 20 seconds flat. 20 seconds flat in 1961 on the old Redford High School track as a student at Detroit Northwestern High School. Henry Carr, who won the 1964 Olympic 200 meters and world record time and had a relay carry well under a world record, 45 seconds on the winning 1,600-meter relay. on an archaic dirt and cinder track in Tokyo, 1964, was the greatest 200-meter talent of all time. He would have beaten Usain Bolt on a competition track, modern track. No question about it. It was 20 flat, translated about 19.1, which was faster than Bolt. But during the 20th century, 8 DPS alumni, in addition to Tolan and Carr, won sprint races for the United States abroad. Of that 8, 5, including this speaker here, this old man here, me, my having been unbeaten at 200 and 400 meters in Europe, and having competed for Wayne University for 4 years on a track scholarship, plus for 2 Detroit public high schools, the Detroit Track Club, and on the U.S. national team, and other DPS alumni broke world records, and 4 competed on national teams in other events, the jumps, the hurdles, the throws, the decathlon. 6 men who came up in Detroit during the 20th century were also world leaders in the boxing ring. Hi-yo Silver. This is Dr. John Telford, welcoming you back to the John Telford Show on WCHB AM 1340 on Saturday morning, July the 1st at 9:30 on Detroit's Gospel and Community Station. Mike Williams informs me that his Brightmoor music series kicks off at noon today, Saturday, July the 15th, at 13400 Burgess in the Ethelda Ray May Williams Park in Northwest Detroit with merchandise vendors and food trucks. The shows will run for the next 8 Tuesdays from 5 to 8 o'clock. The shows are free and family-friendly. Bring a blanket and lawn chair. Mike Williams is coming on my other show, my WJZZ Internet TV show that's coming Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, and we'll have more to say about it then. Okay, as we now learn that the crusading social activist minister Malik Shabazz is blessedly now recovering from his near-fatal heart attack, we have also now learned that the great social activist Joanne Watson is now in the hands of the Lord because we have just lost her, and Detroit is the lesser for it. Joanne Watson was a longtime close compadre of my longtime close compadre and fellow activist Helen Moore. And Reverend Joanne Watson dedicated her entire life to doing good works for the city of Detroit, on the Detroit City Council, with the Detroit NAACP, with Detroit's West Side Unity Church, and in multiple other venues. As I call today for prayers for Joanne Watson, I also call for prayers for someone who also might have grown to lead a wonderful life of service like Joanne Watson did, but now this other someone isn't going to get the lifelong chance to do that. The name of this other someone is Winter Cole Smith, age 2. Winter Cole Smith, age 2. Age 2. And the world has just lost her as well. Lost her at the murderous, hate-filled hands of a truly barbaric 26-year-old man who kidnapped her in Lansing, killed her, and left her tiny, pathetic little body in an alley on Detroit's east side after having stabbed her mother in the face 15 times because her mother didn't want to be with him. My good friend, old New York Jet, Cleveland Brown, and Green Bay Packer linebacker Blaine Smith often rails against brutal racist cops who pull over black men in cars and shoot them for having a malfunctioning taillight, or for making an illegal turn, or for committing some other infraction, whether serious or murderous. But Blaine Smith says that rather than taking the guy who murdered little Winter Cole Smith into custody to face a trial, instead they should have simply shot him down dead on the spot, like a rabid dog. And while I've always opposed capital punishment on principle, except in the case of the evil and treasonous Trump, I have to say that this time I actually think I may agree with Blaine. And speaking of the unspeakable and despicable Trump, I have a poem in my Poets' Corner column in the Downtown Monitor this month about a fascist demagogue whom the fascist Trump will imitate if he can. This demagogue was a historic monster from the 1930s and 1940s who was born with the name Adolf Schicklgruber. Adolf Schicklgruber, who changed his birth name and became known to the world as Adolf Hitler. And I suggest that you get a hold of a Monitor and read my Poets' Corner column because it sends a cautionary message that is very relevant to what we're facing with Trump and Trumpism in this country today. Okay, I'd like once again to invite you to have breakfast at the Detroit House of Pancakes on East Jefferson, then go to V's Boutique on East Warren at Outer Drive to check out the lady's fine clothing she has there, and then to head back to East Jefferson to dine at Sinbad's Restaurant on the river. And here's my brief weekly update on our River House residents' lawsuit against the recent River House Board for refusing to give the residents a special meeting to air our concerns, which they're legally required to do per our bylaws. We're still awaiting a court date. And that's my update this week. We're still awaiting a court date. Okay, in the midst of Trump's idol Putin killing women and children in the Ukraine, in the midst of the increasingly possible eventuality of a world war raged with nuclear bombs, in the midst of the existential threat posed by ever worsening and soon to be irreversible global warming, the truly terrifying possibility of another racist, fascist Trump presidency in this country, and several problems continuing to remain unsolved right here in the Detroit schools. Today, I'm Hi-Yo Silver. This is Dr. John Telford welcoming you back to the John Telford Show on WCHB AM 1340 on Saturday, September the 23rd at 9:30 in the morning in the year of our Lord 2023. And you know, I also have another book out, you know, my newest poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. And it's available on Amazon.com and at other sources. And you know, the Detroit Lions need a defense. They need a defense. You know, my buddy Blaine Smith, who was an NFL linebacker, All-American linebacker at Purdue also, says that they need to get a new linebacker because he says that number 34, I forget the guy's name, has not been reading the offensive plays with any consistency. I don't know why they keep playing that guy, you know, week after week after week. And until they do, I think the Lions are going to have to dig themselves out of a hole in every game. My friend Tiffany Tilley, Democrat Tiffany Tilley, who was with me when we were both on the executive board of the old 14th district when Brenda Lawrence was our congresswoman, is running for Congress now in Michigan's 10th district. And she's running against Republican John James, the incumbent. She's running against John James. And I'm encouraging everyone to get out the vote for Tiffany Tilley. Vote Tiffany Tilley is her site. Vote Tiffany Tilley at gmail.com. Vote Tiffany Tilley at gmail.com because she understands the challenges that Michiganders face firsthand because she's lived here her entire life. She raised 2 kids here by herself, struggling to make ends meet. She's been an educator and a passionate public servant, working day in and day out to create pathways to a bright future for our youth and our young people, whether through a 4-year degree or career and technical education or a good-paying local job. And now she's running for Congress. Tiffany Tilley is running for Congress to bring our voices to Capitol Hill, where decisions are made, once we get rid of Kevin McCarthy. Michigan's working families deserve a leader like Tiffany Tilley, because Tiffany's going to fight for the things that will improve our community and improve our quality of life, affordable housing, tackle the climate crisis, and ensure that all of our young people prosper, ensure that they prosper. Tiffany Tilley's personal journey has been shaped by the challenges that her family faced when she was growing up. Please don't call into the show. If you're going to call into the show, call into my WJZZ show on Wednesday morning. So the call-in number is 313-355-6018. That's 313-355-6018. Tiffany's got a story that she grew up in northwest side of Detroit. She's got a story that many Detroiters know very well. She lost her brother and her cousin to gun violence, and she lost another cousin to substance abuse. Both epidemic in our city of Detroit. But this is John Telford, Detroit Public Schools Community District Board of Education candidate, welcoming you back to the half-hour John Telford Show on the all-new WCHB AM 1340, Detroit's gospel and community station. I trust all us Detroiters will remember, vote Telford for the school board in November. Since my Detroit school board candidacy is so vital for the future of our students in Detroit, I've got to stress a whole lot of times on this WCHB AM 1340 show between now and the November 8 election how absolutely crucial to the education of our students it is that I be elected to the Detroit School Board. On this WCHB AM 1340 radio show, I've shared more than 30 goals that I had for the Detroit Public Schools when I was serving pro bono as the Detroit Public Schools superintendent in 2012 and 2013. Well, now we're in the year 2022, 10 years later, with a new quote-unquote school district, the DPSCD. I have another show too, on WJZZ, that's internet television show, and I had Lamar Lemons, who's another candidate for the school board, on my WJZZ show this past Wednesday morning, and he did a beautiful job of explaining the transition between DPS and DPSCD. That show has moved geographically from Ralston Street to Shane Street, and the station manager and owner of WJZZ, Roger Penzabeni, was having some technical trouble. So I don't have a copy of that videotape, but when he gets it, I think Roger's going to be getting it worked out and sent to me today. I will be posting it on my Facebook page and also sharing it with many of my email contacts, and of course I'll get a copy to Lamar too, so he can use it in his campaign. Because I've been letting other folks that are running for the school board onto that show to state their platforms. Out of fair and objective journalism, I feel that I must do that. But the Detroit Public Schools Community District Board and Administration just haven't raised the failing reading scores. They haven't done it. And this is why at the age of 86, I'm running for the school board. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to The John Telford Show, coming to you live on Saturday mornings at 9:30 and Monday evenings at 6:30.